Hey guys, welcome back. Hope you're doing well. And in today's video, I am in On1 Photo Raw again, and I've got a landscape from Wales. And I go through and I edit the photo, and I end up using a filter that honestly, I never use. And frankly, I never expected to use, but it had a nice and I think helpful impact on the photo. Let's get going. This is my base photo. It's a raw file. We climbed up, like we went over like here, over this ladder thing, over this stone wall. This is Lake Ogwen, I believe it's called, in Wales, in Snowdonia. It's gorgeous there. I love it. Anyway, that's the photo. Now, I've already done a couple of things here in the Develop tab. Let me go ahead and hit that. And you can see, if you look at the before, this is why I always shoot raw files. I mean, it looks kind of blown out basically in the sky, but yet with the raw file, I'm able to pull that back. I brought the highlights way down and add a little contrast, bumped up the shadows and midtones, added a little bit of structure. And also you can see that there is some lens correction that's occurring. That was done automatically. So there it is, before lens correction and after. So one more time, base photo, raw file, unedited, and there it is with a little bit of work in Develop. But what I typically do is I start in Develop and then I jump over to effects and start having some fun. And the first effect that I grab is HDR Look, simply because I like it. And I wanted to add a little bit of crunch. I mean, it's all this rock and all this terrain and all this stuff, but I don't want it everywhere because I don't need HDR effect in the sky, for example. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a luminosity mask and then invert that and take a look at it. And you can see what that does. It just basically creates a mask based on light values, but I inverted it because the lighter values, of course, are in the sky. So I flipped it. In other words, now I'm creating the mask basically for the land. And that works really well for isolating. Now you could do other things like AI quick mask to come in and just pick the sky and leave the rest of the photo alone, but I just thought this worked really well. But then I also came in with levels and just basically tightened this up a little bit. And so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. This basically just tightens up kind of where the mask is being applied. Now it looks like that. And so if I turn off the view, you can see HDR effect. There it is before, and there it is now. You'll notice the sky is not impacted. And again, that is because the mask looks like that. White reveals, black conceals. So this HDR effect is not going into the areas that are in black. So pretty much not the sky. I'm going to copy that mask because I'm going to use it again. I'll click view to go back to where I was, and that's my photo now. So after that, one of the things I want to do is the greens to me are a little bit too yellow. I want them to be a little bit more rich kind of green. So I'm going to go into color balance, and what I'm going to do is go into shadows, and I'm going to take the hue to like a 218, so something about like that, and the saturation or the amount is going to 33, and then I'm actually going to take the brightness slightly down, like a -6 or 7. Let me show you what this does to the photo. There it is before. You can see there's a lot of yellow in that green, and that's the case really every time I have green in a photo. You can play with the yellows and have a huge impact on the way the greens look. They're really close a lot of the times, and they seem to be overlapping a lot in photos. So anyway, I wanted that kind of yellowy kind of green to be a little bit more rich green, and that's what I've done there. I don't want to overdo it. And also, by the way, in these distant hills, I like the way it looks there too. So I just wanted to make those adjustments, and that's what I've done. So color balance is balance the color, giving me a little bit richer green, not overdoing it, and I'm just doing it in the shadows. I could come in and do the same thing in midtones or highlights, but I kind of skip it. In this photo, I thought that looked just fine like that. Now this next filter is the one that I use that I just honestly, I've never used. So I'm gonna go add filter, and I get Bleach Bypass, which, you know, it has that kind of impact on the photo. I'm gonna go ahead and paste the mask because I don't want it applying to the sky. I just want it applying to the foreground area. But it's not something I ever use or really ever expected to use, but I like the impact it has on the photo. Now I'm gonna make some adjustments here. The amount I'm leaving at 50. The brightness I'm actually gonna increase to about a 10. I don't wanna overdo the high contrast look here. but I'm gonna actually bump contrast a little bit, but along with the brightening. And so this Bleach Bypass is given kind of a nice, kind of slightly desaturated, a little bit kind of crunchy, I don't know, just kind of looks rough, for lack of a better word. But there it is before Bleach Bypass, and there it is after. I love what it's done over here to the mountains. Let me hit Z, get out of the masking. But I love the way the mountains look. I love the way this stone wall in the foreground look. So if I turn this off, now that we're up a little bit closer, you can see the before. And then turn this back on, you can see the after. Just a little bit more contrast, a little, it doesn't really impact the details, but it looks like it adds a little bit of crunch because that contrast is impacting it. So Bleach Bypass, I think, had a nice complementary kind of effect on this photo. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then one more one more tool, which is Tone Enhancer. And what I'm going to do here is actually go and get a gradient mask, and I'm going to use this linear top. I'm going to drop it in something like that, kind of broaden that gradient zone, maybe move it up a little bit. And so I'm going to hit Z one more time to get out of that. You can kind of see what my mask looks like. Remember, white reveals, black conceals. So whatever I do here is going to go into the white area and then gradually fade until it gets into the area that's black. And so close the masking menu. My exposure is going to go up by about a 15, a 0.15 that is. So I'm just basically brightening, I didn't get that 1.5, there it is, basically brightening that a little bit. I'm actually going to lift the highlights a little bit. And so this is not going to impact the sky because, again, I've got this gradient mask impacting just the foreground. So I purposefully have excluded the sky. And then whites are going to go up about a 12. And so something about like that. So basically kind of brightening the foreground, but I brought back the highlights and the whites a little bit, partly because I want the, if you look at it, the sheep are a little bit darker there, and now they're slightly a little bit brighter along with the foreground and some of those rocks. And so I just wanted to come in and do something like that, just to give that a little bit better visibility. And actually, that wasn't my last filter. I have one more, and this is another tool that I haven't used a lot in the past, and that's Glow. And so what I'm going to do is use one of the presets, which is Charge More Subtle. So I like that. I think that looks good. I'm going to leave all the settings here, but I'm actually going to drop the opacity quite a bit. And I'm going to go to about a 30 here. So I felt like at 100, it's way too contrasty and kind of overdone. But at like 30 or 40, I kind of like it. So I think I left it at about 30 here on the opacity. So I added the glow. I used that preset look of Charge More Subtle, but then I reduced the opacity of that filter across the entire photo. So if you look at the before and the after, it does add a little bit of contrast. It slightly negates what I did with Tone Enhancer, but not completely. Whereas at 100, it's kind of undoing what I did with Tone Enhancer, which was bright in the foreground. I like that moody kind of look, but I didn't want to do that too much. So that's why I just reduced the opacity and I went for the subtle look. So before and after, it's pretty minor. In fact, I could probably bump that up a little bit, maybe 35. I just don't want to go too far because I don't want to add too much more contrast and darkness to the foreground, which I just spent a minute with Tone Enhancer brightening. So one more time, before glow and after, a nice little final wrap up. And let me show you the before and after overall. That's the image, fairly flat, typical for RAW files, blown out parts of the sky, needs lens correction, all that kind of stuff was handled quickly and easily on the Develop tab. But then once I get over here to effects, stacking these things like HDR Effect, Color Balance, Bleach Bypass, I think looked really good here. Tone Enhancer and Glow got me to that final look. So one more time, before and final look. Also balance the greens with color balance to get rid of a little bit of that yellow. Let me show you how that impacted the photo. There it is before. You can see it's got warmer kind of look, but I wanted a little bit more green, and there it is after. In fact, let me just try a little bit of midtones as well. Let me get over here in the greens. I think I was at 218, so something maybe like that. Let me just try the amount. Yeah, see, it's going to get even richer green. There's a lot of midtones in the image. I kind of like that too, so maybe I'll add that to the photo. The point is, lots of power, lots of control. You can experiment and have fun, but you can take an image that maybe you like. I like the scene a lot. I just didn't like some of the colors and the lack of detail and pop in the image there. But now, lots of detail, lots of pop. And I think I'm going to go back and pull back some of that green. Actually, you know, The great way to do that is with the opacity slider, which is kind of what I did on the glow. So maybe I'll just do that with the greens. Maybe I'll take that down to about 70 overall. So there it is, a bit more yellow, a bit more green overall. I like using opacity because sometimes it's hard to get the exact look that you want by adjusting the saturation levels of the various sliders, midtones, shadows, highlights, things like that. The overall opacity is a great way to say, I love this effect, just want to tone it back a little bit. So I have to remind myself, and it's a good thing to keep in mind when you're editing. Opacity sliders on these filters can be really useful. That's it for this one, my friends. Hope it gives you some ideas. I just thought using Bleach Bypass like that was kind of a cool look. I kind of amped up kind of the gritty overall look of this scene, specifically in the foreground, which is what I was going for. Hope it helps. Hope it gives you some ideas. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys again real soon in the next video. Until then, you guys take care of yourselves, and adios.